Awesome. Hi, everybody. My name is Alex Ross. Like Sandy said, I work with Defend Our Future. We are part of the Environmental Defense Fund, and we work on campuses across Arizona and about 10 other states in the country to work with students to advocate for kind of common sense climate solutions. And so I'm really happy to get the chance to speak with you all today. And then Ulisses.
Hey everyone, this is Ulisses Correa with Mi Familia Vota. So we basically help out a lot in the environment. We are located in other states from Georgia, Florida, Texas, and of course Arizona and California. So yeah, we've done a lot of work in the environment side, and yeah, thank you all for joining and taking the time to be here. With that, we can definitely get started with our presentation. We have here about environmental justice. So for today's agenda, we have we're going to start with our community guideline, an introduction, little icebreaker that we have. We'll also talk about what is environmental justice, park disparities, particle pollution, Coolidge expansion project, heat maps, and legislative priorities. All right. And yeah, these are our community guidelines that we have. We have the safe space, respect pronouns, collective knowledge, one mic, and inclusive language. So those are the guidelines that we have here today. Yeah, on to the next slide. So yeah, this is our quick introduction. Let us know what your name is, pronoun, school or occupation. Leave it down in the chat, and then just a little icebreaker, favorite outdoor activity. I can definitely get started. My name again is Ulisses Correa. My pronouns are he, him, él. School and occupation. Currently work for Mi Familia Vota, and then favorite outdoor activity I have is playing soccer. Alex, I don't know if you'd want to introduce yourself.
So my pronouns are he, him as well. My favorite outdoor activity, that's kind of tough. Probably like being at the beach, swimming at the beach. And then if you're not comfortable, getting on your mic, feel free to share it in the chat. That is totally fine as well.
Yeah, so we have here Sandy. She's introducing herself. She put she, her, and her favorite outdoor activity is hiking. Sandy Whitley, she, her, pronouns, retired, and right now she's enjoying hiking. And then David, I believe you have your hand raised. You wanted to say something?
Oh, I didn't know if you wanted us to introduce ourselves in person or yeah. So I'm David Robinson, Tucson Audubon's new conservation director, and my favorite outdoor activity, no surprise, is birding, bird watching.
That sounds fun. Thank you so much. And then we have Patrick as well. He, him, climate activist, hiking. Rebecca Hinton, she, her, gardening. Steve, retired teacher and hiker. But yeah, thank you so much. We're seeing a lot of action. We'll definitely keep an eye out on more, but I think we should keep on going. So the next slide is basically what is environmental justice? So quick definition that we have here is environmental justice is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. Alex, if you'd like to elaborate any more.
Yeah, I guess really the only thing I like to think about when we talk about environmental justice is really just reframing it less as an issue of like the nature around us and more of like a people-centered issue, right? Like we know that preserving forests and preserving public lands is really, really important. But we know that also creating safe and healthy communities is just as important. So when we look at environmental justice with more of a social lens, that's why I think we can start to understand the different ways that the injustice kind of appears.
So yeah, thank you, Alex. Yeah, it's a lot about what is environmental justice on it. But the next slide we have is defining intersectionality. We have here a quick video that explains a bit about intersectionality. So yeah, we're gonna play it. Let me know if you guys can hear it as well. So, let's see.
I'm not hearing it on my end.
Yeah, we can't hear it.
Let me see. Let me check the volume. Maybe that's the problem. Does it sound like scratchy or
It's just, it's really, really low.
really low? Okay, give me a sec. Let me
share.
Yeah.
Or screen.
I think if you, in the screen share, you can like enable it to share your audio, and that should help.
Let me try it out.
Yeah, still nothing.
Yeah, we still can't hear it. Did you look in your, did you click on screen share and enable audio? Maybe try that. I think it may be under advanced sharing options.
Only seen. I'm not sure, that's weird. You want to try it out, Alex? Maybe on your end. Let's
Yeah, let me,
having trouble here. Sorry.
no worries.
Ulysses, you may need to stop sharing your screen for him to show his.
Can folks see my screen now?
Yes.
Yeah, and presentation.
Today we hear the call for full equality for women and distinctly for women of color from a multiplicity of perspectives. Intersectionality is a term we often hear, but what does it mean? Kimberly Crenshaw, who coined the term in 1989, explains it with a metaphor.
Consider an intersection made up of many roads. The roads are the structures of race, gender identity, class, sexuality, disability. And the traffic running through those roads are the practices and policies that discriminate against people. Now, if an accident happens, it can be caused by cars traveling from any number of directions, and sometimes from all of them. So if a Black woman is harmed because she is in an intersection, her injury could result from discrimination from any or all directions.
Intersectionality in all discussions of the rights of African American women today is built on the work of previous generations who have always been a part of the fight for full equality. Sojourner Truth escaped slavery in 1827 and became one of the most powerful women's rights activists of her time. She emphasized her identity as both African American and woman in her famous Ain't I a Woman speech at the Women's Convention in 1851. In 1893, Anna Julia Cooper addressed the World Congress of Representative Women, saying, "The white woman could at least plead for her own emancipation. The Black woman, doubly enslaved, could but suffer and struggle and be silent." They demanded recognition of both the femaleness and blackness of African American women in the struggle for political and social advancement. In 1951, the Sojourners for Truth put a call out to Negro women to convene in Washington, D.C. for a Sojourn for Truth and Justice. 132 women from 14 states responded. During the Sojourners' last Eastern Seaboard Conference, they discussed the organizational tenets of fighting against triple oppression facing working-class Black women of racism, sexism, and classism. Their efforts were a precursor to the Black freedom activism of the Black Power era and the Black feminist movement. Named for a raid led by Harriet Tubman, which freed more than 750 slaves, the Combahee River Collective was founded in 1974 by a group of self-identified queer Black feminists. Their Combahee River Collective statement was one of the earliest explorations of the intersection of multiple oppressions to include sexuality. They stated, "Our politics initially sprang from the shared belief that Black women are inherently valuable." The words and actions of these leaders continue to contribute to today's discussion around intersectionality, feminism, and civil rights that demand equality and inclusion for all.
Awesome. So yeah, that was just a brief overview of the history of intersectionality. I know it's a word that we use a lot these days. And so I think it's really important to remember that, you know, it's grounded in Black liberation and those theories and philosophies. And that foundation has allowed us to really expand our work today, right? And one quick note, there was one little inaccuracy in that video. I encourage you to check out the Sojourner Truth project. They go kind of into the history of specifically the Ain't I a Woman speech, which it is almost certain that she never actually even said those words, and that her words were changed and translated by actually another women's rights activist. And so it's really important to recognize that as well.
Thank you so much, Alex. But on to the next slide, we have here about park disparities. So there is an inequality of green space in low-income communities of color. It's across the US, many low-income communities have fewer quality parks. We can also see a difference in park quality based on location, and this can affect the quality of air and health of the community. And just a quick question for everyone, do you have a park in your neighborhood? And you could put it down in the chat, like what park do you have around your neighborhood? And then you can, if you see any other parks from lower income, you can check out the comparison and compare it to somewhere up north. Yeah, I'm seeing Sandy Barr mention, yes, Coronado Park. Greasewood Park in Tucson from David Robinson. And then Joyce Park in Tempe, Mitchell Park in Tempe as well. I live in Arrowhead Ranch. There's a neighborhood park in every development. Okay. And then the next slide I have here is Falcon Park, which is located on Roosevelt Street around Van Buren. It's close to Carl Hayden High School. So they have here this park, which is Falcon Park. We can see like many of the grass is dry. There's not that much trees around the park. And then if we compare it to somewhere up north, we have here Moon Valley Park, which is more green and there's more trees around it. You can see from here, it's not dry compared to the one at the low income area. We can also see here, there's a freeway close to the park. And at the one up north, there's like no freeway. There's more trees around every neighborhood. But yeah, those are the differences between somewhere up north to somewhere on the south side. We're comparing the park differences around there. But yeah, I just wanted to show about the park disparities. And then we got here about particle pollution. Pass it over to Alex.
Yeah, thank you. So these graphs are specifically showing the average number of days of high particle pollution in any given year, specifically for, I pulled Maricopa and Pinal County. Both of these graphs come from the American Lung Association. They do a report card on air quality for the entire country. So if you're ever curious about, your local zip code and what the air quality is where you live, you can check that out. But as you can see, both of these counties have had, especially in more recent years, like well above average days of high particle pollution, right? And that is due to a number of factors that comes from, transportation, that comes from power generation, that comes from industry, from like airlines. So definitely a bunch of different sources, but they all kind of start to pile up. And we know that when, let's say, you have poor air quality, other issues are going to be exacerbated by that, by the poor air quality, right? So like if you have asthma and you're living in a place with high particle pollution, it's going to make it harder for you to breathe. My mother actually has asthma, and we were always kind of watching out for bad air days because it would really have an effect on her. Especially when we were living in Ohio. We lived down the street from a coal generation station. So definitely had a big impact on my childhood. And part of why I think it's so important that we keep advocating for climate now, especially just and equitable climate solutions, because we are so far behind. And that actually takes me to the next point that I kind of wanted to mention, which is the Coolidge Expansion Project. Now, this isn't necessarily something that the legislature is in control of. It's something that really the next step in the process is under the Arizona Corporation Commission. But I figured it was very important to mention because it is a really good example of how communities, especially communities of color and low-income communities, get left out of the process when we're talking about where do we place these power generation stations and how do we do so that's safe for people, right? And so this project, I think it's like $1 billion project, would add 16 new methane gas turbines to the existing Coolidge generation station. And they've had this is led by SRP, and they have had a really, really bad, poor public input accountability process that has really not allowed for a lot of just feedback from the community, right? But there is opportunities to speak at an upcoming SRP hearing, Arizona Corporation Commission hearing with SRP about the next step in this project. So if that's something that you want to make a comment on, we are more than happy to get you more information on that as well. But really, it's just a non-renewable energy source that's not going to be sustainable, and it's going to have decades of lasting impact on specifically air quality, more so than other issues. Awesome. And so I pulled these maps on heat vulnerability from a study that was done in 2008. And what they did is they took a few different markers of heat vulnerability. So specifically temperature, vegetation, and walkability, I think, is the 3 factors they use when determining, vulnerability to heat-related death and illness. And so these 2 maps show areas that have the highest vulnerability, but in red, those areas are suffer from a heat-related incident. Yeah, Ulisses, were you going to say something?
Oh, it's just that you were cutting off a bit.
Oh, sorry about that. So yeah, I think these maps just really show us the very real spatial geographical divisions in our communities, right? And these aren't on accident. These, it didn't just happen this way. it was a result of purposeful, discriminatory tactics by lenders and mortgage brokers and, residential builders throughout history, from like redlining in more, redlining from when it was kind of an official practice, right? Now it's still a practice, but it's more unofficial, more subtle. There's different ways that they still manage to divide people in zip codes. And it's really hard to overcome a lot of those barriers, especially right now as we're in the middle of a housing crisis. It's even harder to find a place that's like within your budget, that's affordable, that's close to work, that's close to good schools, all those kinds of things. So the Ulysses, if you want to go back a couple slides, we actually got a question on the map. So yeah, Rivco, the red areas are the high vulnerability. The blue, I believe, are like the next, like a little bit less. And then the areas that aren't colored in, they either didn't have data for, or it was like really low vulnerability. And similarly with the map on the left, I think the green areas are the lightest and the yellow is kind of the in-between. So you might go forward. So when was it? It was January 5th, I believe, that our press conference for our legislative priorities for this upcoming session. And these were specifically the environmental justice priorities that we had kind of identified as a coalition. So firstly, the adoption and implementation of environmental justice policies across all agencies. So really asking these agencies to think about their policies with that kind of justice lens, right? With thinking about the overlapping issues of race, class, environment, and how we can better serve people, right, through better policies. The next one was more specific legislation to define overburdened communities as those that are really on the front lines of the climate crisis. So the hope would really be to encourage developers and mainly developers to really have more of an understanding of the communities they're going into, an understanding of some of the underlying existing health conditions and environmental conditions. And specifically, I think we have an abundance of luxury housing, especially going up in Phoenix. And I think we don't need any more luxury housing. I think we need sustainable housing. And so I think that's something that we would love to see as well. And then finally, this is like in the perfect world, ADQ would do a review of all of their environmental and public health data and really help us identify these communities that really are either facing the front lines of the climate crisis or have been historically the receivers of industry and dirty industry and pollution. We want to make sure we're protecting those communities and requiring commercial and industrial facilities to have, correct permitting and compliance so that these overburdened communities are not getting a disproportionate amount of industrial or commercial development. Any questions on those really quick? Awesome.
Alrighty, so we're at the end of our presentation. These are our contacts. Again, there's my email right here, Ulisses Correa, so d.ulyssesj@mifamiliavota.org. If you want to contact me, and then obviously Alex's email is right there as well. alexr@defendourfuture.org. So yeah, feel free to contact us with anything. But if you guys have any questions for us, for sure, leave it in the chat. Oh, I see David. He has a question.
Yeah, I was just wondering if Defend Our Future is doing strictly nonpartisan work, or if it also does partisan work. Yeah.
Yeah, so we are a nonpartisan organization. We're mainly focused on really empowering young people, right, to advocate to their legislators. But you know, environmental stuff seems to be partisan these days, doesn't it?
I just had one quick thing that I wanted to add, and that is there is an environmental justice bill that has been introduced by one of the new senators, Senator Hatapley. She is the senator that took the place of Senator Peshlikai when Senator Peshlikai resigned to take a position in the Biden administration. And so Senator Hatapley picked up this bill that Senator Peshlikai has run a couple of times in it. And this year it's Senate Bill 1139. And this is the bill, and we refer to it in our priorities, that requires the Department of Environmental Quality and the Department of Administration to ensure that all state boards, commissions, and other public bodies that are involved in decisions that may affect environmental quality adopt and implement environmental justice policies, and that they provide meaningful opportunities to involve all people, regardless of race, color, ethnicity, religion, income, or education level. So it's a good bill. It'll be hard to get a hearing for it, but we want to work with the senator to do so. So I just wanted to put that on your radar.
Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Shelby.
Have a good day.
It looks like there's a question about whose priorities are these?
Yeah, I can answer that a little bit. So the coalition of organizations, of environmental organizations is pretty long. I think there's about, Sandy, 30 or more organizations that are signed onto the platform.
Yeah, and a couple more to be added to the document, but right now there are 32, and then there are about 15 elected officials. And they were developed in as a coalition of groups developed them.
I was trying to find the link really quickly so we could share the rest of the priorities, but yeah, we can make those available as well.
I can find that link while you're talking. I can do that.
Cool. So any other questions, comments, concerns, final thoughts?
Actually, yeah, one question is, it's very much on my mind as I'm new here at Tucson Audubon, is whether either of your groups is planning to do any work around the elections, you know, and Audubon chapters and national, there it's nonpartisan, and unfortunately Audubon has been in the last election cycle was virtually inactive regarding the election. And there are some groups environmental groups that do some partisan work, and there are others that do nonpartisan, like Environmental Voter Project. I'm just wondering if this is something that you're discussing, how to, in a nonpartisan way, get pro-environmental justice folks working on the elections.
Definitely. I know with Defend Our Future, at least I can't speak for every organization, but we are mainly focused, our electoral activities are mainly like getting out the vote with young people and making sure their registration's up to date, which is about all you can do in the nonpartisan sense, right? besides supplying as much information as we can about the candidates. But that's kind of what we're looking at for the next year, is really hoping to get voter registration efforts out, because there's lots of infrastructure, especially here in Arizona, to get more voters registered. So it's a really exciting time, I think, for us. Ulysses, I don't know if you had anything to add to that.
Yeah, so here in Mi Familia Vota, we're just same thing, doing get out to vote, trying to get as much as voter registrations as we can. We're nonpartisan as well, for any people of color to just register to vote, and that's our action that we're trying to do in our organization.
Thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I see a question from Janine about contacting your, I would say contact your representative. And then, I don't know.
I put a note in, yeah, I put a note in the chat about right now, because the bill hasn't been assigned to committee. So I encourage people to contact Senator Tafthley herself and thank her for introducing it. Ask her to please ask President Fan to assign it to a committee, and then ask for a hearing for it. What happens with these really good bills sometimes, especially if they are introduced by the minority party, is that the Senate president doesn't assign them to a committee until like the last day of the session. So of course, there's no opportunity for them to be heard. And so it takes, you know, really actively trying to get them on an agenda for them to be heard. So this bill has never been heard, so it would be nice to at least get a hearing for it.
Patrick.
Yes, hi, good afternoon. How do the legislative environmental justice priorities relate to the just transition issues, say, on Navajo and Hopi lands?
Sandy, do you want to take that one?
Sure, I'm happy to. Yeah, we have included that, and one of the things that, I mean, there are several forums in which people are advocating for just transition, and just to let everyone know, that's transitioning away from coal to clean energy, and other, you know, important economic development support. And so there are various forums where support is needed and being considered. On the federal level, there are bills. Representative Tom O'Halloran has a bill that would provide some funding and support at the Corporation Commission, where they have included some funding, not nearly enough, in the APS rate case, about $10 million for the Navajo Nation and $1 million for the Hopi, and then $500,000 for the communities around Joseph City, where the Cholla plant is. And then the legislature, there is a lot of money in the budget this year, and they could also allocate some of those dollars to help with this transition. Communities in Phoenix and Tucson benefited from the cheap coal electricity, which was used to pump water uphill via the Central Arizona project. And so we all have a responsibility to help with this transition, and we want it, we want it to be as rapid as possible. So we already have seen the Navajo generating station close, which is good. And the other big plant isn't actually in Arizona, it's Four Corners, but the electricity is provided to Arizona, and APS is the majority owner in that plant. So that was a little long, sorry. And I will stop now.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Well, it looks like we don't have any more questions. So I just wanted to really thank Ulysses and Alex for the presentation, and also for all the good work they're doing. They are there every time there is an important event or activity to further environmental justice and to help address the climate crisis. And so just really want to thank them and their organizations for all the good work that they're doing here in Arizona. And thank you all for coming today. Hopefully that gives you a little more background for Environmental Day and for a lot of other things. And we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much, Sandy, for having us. Thank you, Alex, for the help as well.